I always imagine that when relationships end, there's yelling, maybe tears, maybe a slammed door or a broken plate. But that day, there was just a salad fork, a glass of water, and my daughter telling me she was done. Done with me. It was a quiet afternoon at that fancy little restaurant she liked so much, the one with glass chandeliers that caught the sunlight just right. Everything was perfect on the surface. Linen napkins, the smell of roasted garlic, the sound of polite laughter from nearby tables. But under all that polish, I could feel it. Something sharp, something ready to cut. I had invited Chloe to lunch because I wanted to talk. Really talk. She'd been missing rent payments again. I'd covered her tuition last semester, her car payments, even her new apartment. But every time I asked where the money was going, she'd change the subject. So that day, I thought maybe I could reach her. Mother to daughter. She walked in late, of course. Designer bag slung over her shoulder, phone in hand, sunglasses still on indoors. I smiled and said, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." She gave me a small, distracted smile and said, "Yeah, thanks, Mom." That tone, that half-distracted, half-defensive tone, it stung more than I'd like to admit. We ordered. I tried to make small talk, asked about her classes, her work, her plans. She said she'd figure it out. She always says that. Finally, I set my fork down and looked at her. "Chloe, honey, I'm worried about you. You've missed 2 rent payments and the landlord called me again this week." She rolled her eyes and sighed. "Mom, please, I told you I'll handle it." "I know you said that, but your degree, your car, your rent, you've been struggling. Maybe we can go over your budget together." She cut me off with a laugh that wasn't really a laugh, more like a scoff. "You mean so you can control everything again?" I froze. That word, control. "Sweetheart, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to help you." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "That's what you always say, but every check comes with a leash. Every bit of help comes with a lecture." Her voice was shaking, but not from fear, from something else. Anger, maybe, or pride. I watched her carefully, and that's when I saw it, a new kind of defiance in her eyes. Something rehearsed. It wasn't her voice I was hearing. It was his. Ethan. The boyfriend I'd only met twice but had already learned enough about. Charming, opinionated, the kind of man who smiles at mothers but whispers poison into their daughters' ears. And as she kept talking, I could almost hear his words spilling out of her mouth. "You use money to manipulate people, Mom. You can't control me anymore. I need to set boundaries." Boundaries. Control. Toxic relationships. All those neat little therapy words, but none of the actual healing behind them. I took a slow breath, fighting to keep my voice even. "Chloe, are you sure these are your thoughts, or are they someone else's?" Her eyes flashed. "You always do that. You can't stand it when I think for myself." The people at the next table turned to look. I could feel my cheeks burning, but I didn't say a word. I just sat there, watching my daughter unravel in front of me, and I realized something painful. She wasn't angry at me. She was angry at the version of me she'd built in her head. The absent mother, the provider, the ATM with rules. And nothing I said today was going to change that. Then it came. She pushed her plate away, leaned forward, and said in the coldest tone I've ever heard from her, "I'm done, Mom. We're cutting ties. I don't need your control or your money." For a second, I thought I misheard her. The restaurant around us went silent. I just stared at her, the same girl I once held through sleepless nights, who used to call me Mommy, with that tiny lisp that melted my heart. Now she looked at me like I was a stranger. I wanted to cry, to beg, to remind her of every sacrifice I'd made. But instead, I smiled. A small, calm, deliberate smile, and I said the only word that felt right. "Okay." She blinked, confused. "Wait, what? You said you're done." "I hear you." Then I called for the check. She sat there, staring at me like she was waiting for me to break. Maybe she thought I'd plead, or argue, or pull out the guilt trip card. But I didn't. I paid the bill, left a generous tip, and stood up. "I love you, Chloe," I said quietly. "Always will." And I walked away. That drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I replayed her words over and over, each one sharper than the last. Cutting ties, don't need your money, control. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been controlling, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of losing her, fear of her falling. But as I sat in the stillness of my house that night, something inside me changed. I went to my study, turned turned on the dim desk lamp and opened my laptop. Her accounts were all linked to mine. The tuition payments, the rent transfers, the car insurance, the credit card. I stared at those numbers for a long time. Years of support. Thousands spent to keep her safe, comfortable, dependent. And for the first time, I realized maybe I wasn't helping her grow. Maybe I was keeping her trapped. So I made a decision. A calm, deliberate decision. One by one, I shut it all off. I closed her credit line, canceled the automatic payments, deactivated her access to my bank account. Then I made one final transfer, just $1. In the notes section, I wrote, "For independence, use it wisely," and I pressed send. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, that tiny, absurd transfer sitting there like a declaration of war and love all at once. My hand was shaking, but not from regret, from release. I whispered to myself, she wanted freedom. Now she has it. Then I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, listening to the faint hum of silence, the sound of boundaries finally being drawn. I didn't know what the next morning would bring. Anger, maybe, confusion, a call, a text, something. But the next day, there was nothing. No call, no message, just silence. And as I stared at my phone, I realized something chilling. Sometimes the hardest part of letting go isn't the silence that follows. It's wondering what that silence is preparing you for. Because 2 days later, that silence shattered. When I looked down at my phone, there were 50 missed calls. I thought I was teaching her a lesson, but I was about to learn one instead. The silence came first, cold, heavy, and unbroken. 2 days had passed since that lunch. 2 long, echoing days since my daughter said, "We're cutting ties." At first, I told myself I was fine, that I'd done the right thing. I buried myself in work, answered emails, cleaned the house twice, reorganized the kitchen cabinets. Anything to fill the space where her voice used to be. But silence has a way of expanding, doesn't it? It seeps into the walls, the air, even the heartbeat of a home. By the 3rd morning, I woke up to the sound of nothing. No calls, no texts, no good morning message that used to start with, "Hey Mom, quick question about my account." For 25 years, I had been her safety net. And now, I was the cliff she'd stepped away from. The doorbell rang that afternoon. It was Sarah, my oldest friend. The kind of friend who doesn't knock softly. She storms in with a bottle of wine and advice you didn't ask for. She took one look at me and sighed. "Oh, Victoria, you've been rearranging those flowers since last night." I smiled weakly. "Therapy comes in petals." She sat down opposite me, crossing her legs. "You did the right thing. She needed to learn. She's been living off you too long." "I know," I said, "but she's my daughter." Sarah poured herself a glass and nodded. "And she's an adult. She'll come back when reality hits. But you have to hold the line. No soft landings this time." Her words made sense. Logic always does, until the heart gets involved. That night, after she left, I sat by the window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Chloe was learning how to survive without me. Or so I hoped. I wanted to believe she'd use this as a turning point, that she'd find a job, budget better, maybe even thank me someday. But deep down, I felt something else stirring. Fear. The kind that comes when you realize you've taught someone to swim their whole life, and now you're watching them drown from the shore, unable to dive in. I didn't know then, but on the other side of that silence, Chloe's world was beginning to crack. She tried to act unfazed at first. She still went out for brunch with Ethan, still posted pictures online, filters, smiles, champagne glasses clinking. But behind the phone screen, panic was building. Her card got declined at the cafe. The rent payment bounced, and the shiny car I'd been paying for, the bank repossessed it 2 days later. Ethan didn't take it well. "You said your mom would calm down. What are we supposed to do now?" Chloe tried to explain that maybe I was serious this time. But Ethan didn't want explanations, he wanted access. "Just apologize, call her, get the money back, you can say you overreacted." But Chloe's pride, oh that pride, she got that from me, she refused. I'm not crawling back to her. So the two of them started to spiral, arguments, slammed doors, late-night shouting matches that echoed down apartment hallways. The girl who once mocked my control now found herself trapped by someone else's. Meanwhile, I kept waiting. Not for an apology, just for a sign, a message, anything. But all I got was the hum of my phone charging beside me, screen black, like a closed door. Until one evening, a Friday I think, I noticed something odd. The quiet felt heavier. the air thicker, almost like the house was holding its breath. I made tea, sat down on the couch, and opened my laptop. And that's when I saw it, a notification. Not a call, not a text, just a social media update. Chloe posted a photo. Her smile was wide, but her eyes looked hollow. I knew that look. The kind of smile you wear when you're trying to convince the world and yourself that you're fine. The caption read, "New beginnings." But the background, a messy apartment, half-packed boxes, and Ethan's reflection in the mirror behind her told a different story. The next morning, my phone lit up. Missed call, Chloe. My heart skipped, then another, and another. I didn't pick up. Maybe I wanted her to sweat a little to understand what independence really meant. But by the time I checked again, there were 50 missed calls. 50. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. Sarah happened to drop by that afternoon. She saw the look on my face and frowned. "What is it?" I turned the phone toward her. 50 missed calls from Chloe. She raised an eyebrow. "Well, there it is. The reality check hit. What are you waiting for? Call her back." I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. "No," she said, "we were done." Sarah's expression softened. "Victoria." She wanted freedom, remember? I'm just respecting her wish. But even as I said it, I didn't believe myself. Because a mother's love doesn't vanish with a phone call. It lingers, like a heartbeat you can't silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept glancing at the phone on my nightstand. Part of me wanted to call her, just to hear her voice, to make sure she was okay. Another part whispered, "If you give in now, she'll never learn." So I didn't call. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, counting every heartbeat like it might summon a message. And then, around midnight, the phone buzzed. Not a call, a message. It was from an unknown number. At first, I hesitated. Then I opened it. It was a photo of Chloe. She was sitting in the passenger seat of a car, eyes red from crying. The streetlights outside made her face look pale, almost ghostly. And beneath the picture, a short message. "She's with me. We just need a little help." No name, no explanation, just those words. My breath caught. The room spun for a second. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. She's with me. Who was me? Ethan? Someone else? I tried calling the number. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. Every instinct in my body screamed danger. Had Ethan done something? Was this a trick? Or was my daughter really in trouble? I wanted to call the police, but what would I even tell them? My adult daughter sent a crying photo from an unknown number? No. I needed to think. I needed proof. I stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and blue. Somewhere out there, my daughter, my little girl, was sitting in a dark car with someone who said they just needed help. And I knew in that moment, the silence wasn't over. It was only just beginning to scream. I put the phone down, my pulse thudding in my ears. Somewhere between love and fear, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I was going to find out who sent that message, even if it meant uncovering something I wasn't ready to see. I thought she was learning to stand on her own, but maybe she wasn't standing at all. I always thought silence was supposed to bring peace. But for 2 days, the silence after Chloe's last words, "I'm done, we're cutting ties," felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the ground to give way. Then, that message came. A photo. Chloe, crying in a car, her mascara smudged, her eyes red, and a caption that read, "She's with me, we just need a little help." It came from an unknown number, but I didn't need a name to know who it was. Ethan, the man I had warned Chloe about a dozen times. The man she swore understood her better than I ever could. I sat in my office the next morning staring at that message on my phone, the rain streaking down the glass like ink. I could have gone to the police right away, but something in me said to wait, to think. Because I knew this wasn't about Chloe being hurt physically. This was about power and money. So I called the number back. "Victoria," Ethan said, as if we were old friends. "I was wondering when you'd call." I could hear music in the background, a TV, maybe even laughter. He wasn't panicking, he was performing. I kept my voice steady. "Where's Chloe?" "She's here," he said smoothly. "She's not doing great. She needs help, Victoria. You know, money's tight right now. Hospital bills, debts, life's been hard on her." His tone was slick, rehearsed, like he'd been waiting for this call. "Hospital bills," I repeated. "What hospital?" There was a pause, a long one. I could almost hear his smirk fading. "Look, he said finally. We just need a little cash to get back on track. You don't want to see your daughter fall apart, do you? I smiled, though he couldn't see it, because that was the moment I knew exactly what game he was playing. I refused to send money. Instead, I said softly, if Chloe's in trouble, I'll come see her myself. That threw him off balance. He hesitated. I could hear muffled whispers, Chloe's voice maybe in the background. Then he sighed. Fine, but don't make a scene. She's sensitive right now. He sent me an address, a small apartment complex outside town. The kind of place where dreams went to die quietly. When I arrived, the rain had grown heavier. It plastered my hair to my face as I stood in front of the building. The hallway smelled like cigarettes and broken promises. I knocked. Once, twice. Then the door opened. Ethan stood there, shirt half-buttoned, eyes red, stubble on his jaw. The charm that once fooled Chloe had worn thin. Behind him, the apartment was a disaster. Unpaid bills scattered across the table, empty bottles on the floor, the curtains drawn so tight the room felt suffocating. And there she was, my daughter. Chloe sat on a torn sofa, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and tired. When her eyes met mine, there was a flicker of shame and relief, and then anger. Why are you here? She muttered. I took a slow breath. Because you sent me 50 missed calls, Chloe. Ethan quickly stepped in, placing a hand on her shoulder. She didn't mean to worry you, he said smoothly. She's been emotional. You know how she gets. Something in me snapped, but I didn't show it. Instead, I walked farther into the room, looking around, every corner, every sign of neglect. This, I said quietly, is what independence looks like? Chloe's lips trembled. You wouldn't understand. You cut me off. I did what you asked, I said. You said you were done. You wanted to live on your own terms, and I respected that. But this, I gestured around us. This isn't independence, Chloe. It's surrender. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the rain tapping against the window. Then Chloe broke. Tears streamed down her face, and her words came out between sobs. He said he'd take care of me, that we didn't need your money, but he's been using my card, Mom. He took everything, and when it stopped working, he told me to come back to you. To beg. Ethan's eyes widened. That's not true, he barked. She's lying because she's embarrassed. But the mask was slipping. I could see it. The arrogance, the control, the desperation. I calmly took my phone out of my bag and hit record. Go on, I said softly. Tell me more about how this isn't true. He froze. You're insane, he hissed. You think you can just waltz in here and... I already did, I said. And while you were busy playing the victim, I traced the withdrawals from Chloe's accounts. The police already know, Ethan. He went pale. I stepped back just as there was a sharp knock on the door. 2 officers entered the room, their badges glinting in the dim light. Ethan Wright? One asked. You're under arrest for fraud and unauthorized access to financial accounts. Chloe gasped as the officers cuffed him. Ethan thrashed, shouting, You set me up, you witch! But I didn't say a word. I just watched as they dragged him out into the hallway, his voice echoing down the corridor like a bad memory finally being erased. When it was over, Chloe stood there, shaking. Her eyes were filled with tears and confusion. You ruined everything, she screamed suddenly. I loved him. Her words hit me like a knife, but I didn't flinch. I walked closer, my voice calm but trembling at the edges. No, sweetheart. He ruined you. I'm just helping you see it. But she couldn't bear it. The weight of it all, the shame, the guilt, the heartbreak was too much. She pushed past me, running out into the pouring rain, barefoot and crying. I followed her to the doorway, but I didn't chase her. I just stood there, watching the rain swallow her silhouette as she disappeared down the street. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Cutting someone off doesn't always mean you're letting go. Sometimes, it means watching them fall, praying they'll learn to climb back up. I went back inside and sat down on that torn sofa. The smell of cheap cologne and spilled beer still lingered. On the table, among the bills, I found a photo. Chloe as a little girl, sitting on my lap, smiling with her front teeth missing. I traced her face with my thumb and whispered, I'm still here, baby, even when you think I'm not. The rain outside grew heavier, masking the sound of my tears, and just as I gathered my things to leave, my phone buzzed again. A message from Chloe. Just 3 words. Don't come home. That was when I knew this wasn't over. because someone else was pulling the strings now. And my daughter, my brilliant, stubborn Chloe, was still caught in the web. It's been 2 weeks since Chloe disappeared into the rain, 2 weeks since the police took Ethan away, and 2 weeks since I last heard my daughter's voice. You'd think silence would get easier with time. But sometimes silence is heavier than words ever could be. I spend my mornings in the garden now. It's peaceful there, simple, grounding. The roses don't ask questions. They don't storm off in anger. They just bloom, quietly, faithfully, even after being cut. I suppose I understand them better these days. As I prune the roses one dawn, I catch myself thinking about all the things I could have done differently. Not as a mother who failed, but as a woman who tried to do everything right. I used to believe that success and sacrifice were two sides of the same coin. I worked late nights, built a career, made sure Chloe never lacked for anything material. But what she needed most was my presence. And when she grew older, her dependence on me wasn't just financial. It was emotional. Maybe I taught her, unintentionally, that love was something you earned with comfort and money, not trust and boundaries. That's what therapy helped me see. Yes, I started therapy after all of this, because when your child walks away from you, it's easy to blame them, but harder and braver to ask, what part of me made that possible? I froze. My heart didn't race, not this time. It simply waited. I wiped my hands on my apron, picked up the phone, and saw her name on the screen. Chloe, just one call, not 50. Not frantic, just one, I answered. Her voice was small, tired, shaky but clear. Mom, I got a job. For a moment I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of her breathing. She went on, it's not fancy or anything. I'm working at a small bookstore downtown. I wanted to tell you in person, but I needed you to know, I'm okay. My throat tightened. The roses blurred in front of me. Chloe, I said softly, you don't have to explain anything. She laughed quietly. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh in months, but it was different. Not careless, not performative, just real. Can we meet? She asked. We met later that afternoon, at the same restaurant where it all began, where she'd said, I'm done, we're cutting ties. Life has a way of circling back, doesn't it? The same walls, the same sunlight pouring through the windows, but everything felt different. When Chloe walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was tied back simply, her makeup minimal. She wasn't hiding behind designer clothes or filters anymore. She looked human again. Tired, yes, but free. She sat across from me, her eyes uncertain but softer than before. Hi, Mom, I smiled. Hi, sweetheart. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just let the silence settle, not the kind that hurts, but the kind that heals. Then she sighed. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Not for cutting ties, I think I needed that. But for blaming you for everything. For acting like my life was falling apart because of you, when really, I just didn't know who I was without you. Her honesty hit me harder than any argument we'd ever had. I reached across the table, resting my hand over hers. You don't owe me an apology, Chloe, I said gently. You just owe yourself a promise that you'll stand on your own 2 feet. Not for me, for you. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I'm trying, she whispered, and this time, I want to do it right. We ordered lunch, nothing fancy, just the same soup and sandwiches we'd shared before. But this time there was laughter, small, cautious laughter, like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. As we talked, I realized something important. Independence isn't about cutting people off. It's about learning when to hold on and when to hold yourself up. Chloe told me about her new job, how she loved the quiet of the bookstore, the smell of paper and coffee, the small paycheck that somehow made her prouder than any allowance I'd ever given her. And I listened, really listened, for the first time in a long while. Because sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give is silence that says, I believe in you. When we finished eating, Chloe excused herself to the restroom. I sat there, letting the moment sink in, the peace, the calm, the absence of tension that used to cloud our every conversation. It felt good. Then the waiter walked over and placed the bill on the table. Your daughter already took care of it, he said with a smile. I looked down at the receipt, stunned. She'd paid, not with my card, not with a favor, but with her own hard-earned money. A simple act, but it felt monumental. I felt tears sting my eyes as I looked toward the doorway, where sunlight was spilling across the floor, and I whispered to myself, that's my girl. I didn't chase her this time when she left. I didn't try to fix anything. Because for the first time, she didn't need saving. As the light poured through the restaurant window, I realized something I wish I'd known all along. Love doesn't mean control. Support doesn't mean rescue. And sometimes, letting go isn't punishment, it's faith. Faith that the roots you planted will grow, even when you stop watering them. That night, as I closed my eyes, I thought about the first time Chloe said, "We're done." And how, somehow, those words brought us right back to where we both needed to be, honest, humbled, and human. Because sometimes, endings aren't the opposite of beginnings. They're the proof that growth happened. And as the last light of day faded from the sky, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, not for perfection, but for progress. If you've ever had to make the painful choice to let someone go, a child, a friend, even a part of yourself, remember this. Love doesn't always sound like yes. Sometimes it sounds like enough. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love or someone you've had to lose to find again, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Because here we tell stories that heal, stories that remind us that even through the silence, love always finds a way back home.